A nobleman fell dead at the banquet table. By morning, 3 more followed. The French court blamed witchcraft. The truth was far worse. November 1st, 1755. The Palais-Royal in Paris. I've studied the witness accounts, the servants' depositions, the court physician's notes, and what emerges is a portrait of calculated chaos. The Duke of Orleans, brother to King Louis Roman XV, had just married for the second time. The wedding feast was meant to seal a dynasty. Instead, it became the deadliest meal in French royal memory. Let me rewind. The Duke of Orleans was no stranger to scandal. His first wife had been his own daughter. The court whispered, the church condemned. But scandal in the ancient regime was currency. Money and power could bury almost anything. This marriage, though, was meant to be his redemption, a fresh start, a new alliance. That's what made what happened next so shocking. The evening began as these things always did. Wine flowed, musicians played. The bride was young, beautiful, from an old family. The guest list read like a map of French power: bishops, generals, ministers, aristocrats. Everyone who mattered was there. And then, around midnight, the first guest collapsed. His name was the Marquis de Grave, a minor noble but well-connected. Witnesses said he complained of stomach pain, then violent convulsions. Within an hour, he was dead. The court physician examined him, no obvious cause. Poisoning was suspected, but by whom and why? The feast continued. Nobody left. Nobody wanted to be the first to show fear. Then came the second death, and the third, all within hours. The pattern became unmistakable. Those who'd eaten from certain dishes fell ill. Those who'd avoided them lived. Panic rippled through the Palais-Royal. The bride wept. The Duke demanded answers. The king, just miles away at Versailles, was informed. This wasn't gossip anymore. This was a crime. Here's where most histories stumble. They invoke poison, then stop. They invoke witchcraft, then move on. But I've read the actual testimony, the kitchen servants' accounts, the food tasters' statements. The real story is far more mundane and far more damning. Someone in that kitchen knew exactly what they were doing. The investigation turned inward. The Duke's household staff came under scrutiny. One servant, a cook named Beaumont, had a motive that makes your skin crawl. He'd been promised a fortune by a rival noble family to ensure the wedding never happened. Not to kill the Duke himself, mind you. That would have been too obvious, but to destroy the celebration, to humiliate him, to make the marriage cursed from the start. Beaumont had access to arsenic. It was used in the kitchens for pest control, not unusual, not suspicious. He knew which dishes the Duke preferred. He knew which guests would eat what. He was invisible, as servants always were, and yet he was everywhere, watching, calculating, waiting for the moment to act. The bodies were examined. The autopsies, crude by modern standards but thorough, showed poisoning consistent with arsenic. The court's suspicion hardened into certainty. Beaumont was arrested. Under interrogation, he eventually confessed. The rival family was named. The conspiracy unraveled like a thread pulled from a tapestry. But here's the part that caught me when I first read this. Beaumont was never tried. He died in the Bastille before a public hearing could occur. The rival family was quietly exiled. The scandal was suppressed. The king issued orders. The wedding feast was to be erased from official records. It never happened, officially. The Duke lived another 30 years, haunted by what happened. He never spoke of it publicly. The bride bore him children, but the marriage was always shadowed by that night. The guests who survived carried the memory like a scar. And the dead, well, they were forgotten, as the powerful often ensure. What strikes me now, decades into reading these stories, is how little changed. A conspiracy born of jealousy and greed. A servant used as a tool, then discarded. A family erasing inconvenient truths. Power protecting itself. It's the same story told in different centuries, different languages, different courts. The wedding feast of the Duke of Orleans remains one of history's strangest poisoning cases, not because of the poison itself, but because of what came after. Not the investigation, not the arrests, but the silence. The deliberate, calculated erasure of an entire event from the record. 4 people died, and France's aristocracy simply pretended it never occurred. If you want to understand how power really works, not in textbooks but in the actual moment, you need to understand this case. Because it's not about the poison. It's about who gets to decide what happened, who gets erased, who gets to speak, who gets silenced forever. Subscribe, there's a new court conspiracy waiting every week.